Hello there, my name is Sixo, but more on that later because honestly, how often do Transformers toys look as good as this? Seriously, I've wanted a toy of this guy since his debut in the Dreamwave comics all the way back in 2003, and let me just say that after 22 years, this Age of the Primes figure does not disappoint. I mean, this guy hails from before The Fallen was a thing in the live action films and everything that came after that. This is the OG, looking very accurate to the comic book page, and it's just a dream come true for longtime fans like me. In that storyline, we learned that The Fallen was one of the original 13 Transformers created by Primus to fend off against the threat of Unicron, except this guy broke bad and ended up working for the Chaos Bringer instead. Eventually, he returns to Cybertron attempting to make Primus's presence known to his master, and proves to be a little bit of a thorn in the side of the Autobots and Decepticons whilst he's at it. Now, even though the Dreamwave comics have been largely forgotten about by a wider portion of the fandom these days, this character continues to remain influential in ongoing Transformers media. And really, can you be too surprised considering how inherently awesome he is? So anyway, it's time to see if this toy lives up to that hype, but before we begin, it is worth me mentioning that this review is brought to you by TF Source, so you will find a link to their site in the description below, and you should absolutely go and check them out because they've got tons of Transformers stuff in stock and available for pre-order right now, so what are you waiting for? I've already mentioned that this toy is exceptionally good looking, but that becomes apparent as soon as you get it out of the box. I mean, it's big, it's beefy, it's chunky, it's got great proportions, and just generally the aesthetics of it are very pleasing to the eye. It's everything that I could have wanted from an eventual Fallen toy and more. It's got that right kind of sinister vibe. That head sculpt is liquid perfection. Again, very accurate to how the character is portrayed in the Dreamwave comics, but beyond that, they've made sense of it and they've made it look good in a 3D form as well, so I really think they've done an exceptional job with it. Now, there's obviously not much colour going on overall, save for some little pops of purple and some yellow highlights, but it still looks really good thanks to some fantastic moulding, which you can truly appreciate once you get up close. Although I will say that I would have liked a little bit of colour just in the middle here, because the comic character has a bit of a light in his chest. Got similar little daubs of yellow on his shoulder just there and some cannons on top, so that all looks fantastic. Going around to the other side, this little piece is an accessory that you need to put on straight out the box, but it really works, and again it's quite accurate to the page. Got a little bit of purple for the waist section with some yellow highlights, and he's got these little hip skirt thingies going on as well. Tiny bit of hollowness going on the thighs, but it really doesn't bother me, honestly. Otherwise he's pretty solid overall. And again, you get more of that nice shiny purple on the knees, it really catches the light nicely, bit of yellow, and just check out those for a pair of clompers, right? Those are some toes. So yeah, suffice it to say, he's a true treat for the eyes even before he starts slapping on all the flames and other bits and bobs. Speaking of which, we've got his rather massive arm cannon, which looks absolutely fantastic. Nice bit of yellow on the side and his little Megatronus symbol at the top there, and that will peg into either of the two ports on his forearm, so you just kind of whack it in like so, and that looks superb once in place. You can put it on either arm, but the instructions do suggest the right arm, which I guess is maybe why some people thought this was going to be a Studio Series Megatron pre-tool. Then you've got this little cannon barrel piece, which actually I guess could go on his arms as well, but actually the instructions have it placed on his shoulder, which is quite comic accurate. There's a little port for that just back here, so you just want to go ahead and tab that in like so, just kind of sits over his shoulder. And yeah, you know, there's a little bit of posing required, like you will need to kind of move it out the way occasionally, but I still think that looks great. And again, it's just cool that it recalls the comic so closely. Then we have two handheld blade weapons, the first of which is actually made up of two separate pieces. They just kind of come apart like that, and this bit here is all kind of rubbery, which is a little bit strange to see, but perhaps not entirely unexpected, but still it looks great overall. And again, you could put that on his arm or anywhere else, but we're going to put it in his hand because that's just how we roll. And last, in terms of the weapons, we've got this smaller but still rather impressive sword with a nice bit of eye-catching silver going on. And likewise, that just goes straight into his hand, although here you will need to open up and then close the fingers slightly to get it into place. And look, we don't even have the flame parts on yet, and he already looks menacing as you like. I just love that they gave him so many weapons. It really feels like a very complete set, which for the price point, I certainly appreciate. But look, you're definitely going to want those flame pieces in place, right? They just peg in like so. Exactly the same on this side, just using those little peg ports to get them in place. And then at the rear, we've got these two smaller flame pieces, which just peg into the top of his backpack like so. And that looks wicked, right? Like absolutely wicked in every sense of the word, I suppose. But how many Transformers characters do you know that spend their life perpetually on fire, right? So they had to do it justice, and make no mistake, they definitely did. Really dig the color of these flame pieces too, because you've got the nice kind of darker orange here, little highlights and everything. It's not just one uniform color. It doesn't look cheap at all. It actually looks really good. Same goes for these two back pieces as well. I mean, they do have little tab holes in them on the one side because you can peg them into the sword, or anywhere else that you care to think of, and you can also use them as blast effect pieces as well, so get creative, I think. And with the flames installed and all of the weapons being wielded, he looks absolutely incredible. These are very definitely the vibes I was looking for, right? But again, just feels like a very complete set overall. There's a lot going on. Visually, it's really striking. There doesn't really seem to be any obvious compromises so far, so I couldn't be more impressed, to be honest. You know, even from a rear view, it's all exceptionally clean and tidy and well thought through. Yes, of course, you've got some visible peg holes and that kind of stuff, but this is a Generations toy at the end of the day, so it's to be expected. Now, speaking of those tab holes, you've actually got a lot of very clever weapon storage going on here. I mean, the first thing is that you can kind of rotate this cannon down if you really don't want it over the shoulder, and that fits quite neatly. His larger cannon can then fit on the other side, just like so, just pegs in, and that actually looks pretty good too. You've then got these more obvious peg holes just there, and that, of course, is for his two blade weapons, which just peg in like so. And there we go, there's everything very neatly stored away. Kind of gives him a little bit of extra bulk, if anything, but it's very neat and tidy, clever design. I'm really into it. Alternatively, these little backpack pieces can actually be raised up. Now, this is not in the instructions at all. This is a Sixo special, but I don't know, it kind of looks like cannons, really, to my eye. I think that kind of works. And hey, even if not, whilst I'm folding them away, I do want to take a moment to appreciate these little spikes along here as well. That is just rad. Also fair to say that there are tons of ways that you can use these weapons in different configurations. The first of which is to combine the two swords like so, which is actually for storage in the tank mode, but it works in robot mode as well. I mean, if you really wanted to, you could remove that end piece of the sort of trident weapon, but I quite like it on the end actually. It looks pretty cool. And to my eye, something about that just works as a kind of double-edged blade. I think it suits him rather well. Then there's the cannon, which again can be extended for the tank mode, but actually that looks pretty cool in robot mode also, especially if you go the whole hog and combine it with this second gun piece. You just got to flip out that little bit on the end just there and it just pegs right in. And I swear, I'm definitely cooking with something here, right? Like, it's not just me. That looks pretty badass. I just think it's cool to have these kinds of options when it comes to how you're going to display this robot form. Of course, you can then use those flame pieces in the end of this cannon as well, so that looks equally cool. Or you can do stuff like peg the swords onto his arms if indeed you want to. I mean, it's your toy, you display it how you want. It's options at the end of the day. Now, articulation-wise, there's a lot of good here too. The head moves very freely for one thing, and it can look up and down as well. With the shoulders, they will go up to 90 degrees out to the side, and there's actually a double butterfly joint in there as well, so you get tons of motion in those shoulders. Really, really nice. There's a bicep swivel in there, and you will get a 90-degree bend at the elbow as well. And then the wrists are on a ball joint, so there's a lot of motion there, and again, you've got articulated fingers all on one block. Got a decent old waist swivel going on in there, that moves very freely. And if you move that little hip skirt out the way, the hips are actually fantastic because the legs come all the way up past the sort of 90-degree mark. That's really, really good, and you've got a decent rotation in there as well. Got another rotation here thanks to that mushroom peg, and then you will get a 90-degree bend at the knee. And then you've got one of the most prominent ankle tilts I've seen in forever, I think. It's really good. And then you've got a little bit of bend back and forth in the feet as well. But alas, it couldn't all be perfect, could it? But my only slight bugbear here so far is a slightly loose joint in this shoulder where it just doesn't want to quite take the weight of that cannon. Annoying. Like, don't get me wrong, it will hold and you can pose it, but just with a little bit of a knock, it's likely to fall back again. So I am quite disappointed about that, not gonna lie. Now, there are a couple of screws in the back of the shoulder, which I have just tightened ever so slightly, and it is better than it was, slightly more stable. Still not as good as I would want, but it might have to do for now. Now, again, I should stress that it's really only a problem once you start attaching all the heavy stuff, like the big cannon, and it definitely can hold a pose, especially now that I've tightened those screws, but it just doesn't have the feeling of tightness that I might want. You know, all of the other joints are perfect, honestly, and overall it really does have that feeling of a very well-made figure. And overall, the thing is so poseable that he's a lot of fun to pick up and mess with. Like, I'm really having a good time with this thing. He looks great, he handles great mostly, and honestly, it's everything I could have wished it to be. Now, in terms of comparisons here, you can first see him with the Studio Series 86 Optimus Prime and the Earthrise Megatron mold, and as we now know, there's a new Studio Series Megatron on the way, but it's definitely not a retool of Megatronus here. Then here you have him with a couple of other recent Generations leader class figures, and it has to be said, he feels like exceptional value for money so far, just in terms of the size and all the bits that he comes with. It really feels like, again, that very complete package. And then here we have him with some other Simon Furman creations iterations in recent toy form, and it's just great to see this number of comic original characters being given their due in accurate form. I'm all for it, and I couldn't be happier with how these are turning out. And of course the same is true of a lot of the IDW characters as well. I mean, here you've got it with Nova Prime and Tarn, who are two also not very nice guys from the comics, and again, I just think seeing all of these characters done in such wonderful toy form, what an age we live in. And then finally we have him with some of the other recent 13 Primes figures, including Legacy Vector Prime, who may be getting replaced. I'm not really sure, I heard a rumour in that direction, but either way, I'm so happy with how all of these are turning out so far. Just so interesting. But yeah, suffice it to say, very, very impressive robot mode, so I'm equally excited to check out that transformation. That's transformation done, and there's nothing really too complicated there, certainly nothing that's going to keep you up at night, and it kind of spits out this fairly funky looking but quite Cybertronian-esque tank mode, which is pretty cool actually. Like, I'm someone that's a little bit skeptical about non-earthen tank modes at times, if only because I feel like the whole idea is kind of often used to hide a multitude of sins. You know, just calling it Cybertronian means that you can kind of fudge it and make things up a little bit, but fortunately that doesn't largely seem to be the case here. Like, don't get me wrong, that's very obviously a leg, right? With like thigh, shin, foot, it's all there for everybody to see, but it's perhaps not as obvious as you might think it is, at least. Likewise, there's a fair amount of just kind of folded up panels and stuff just in the middle here, but it doesn't look bad at all. What I do find slightly strange are these arms and the way they're orientated to make the turret section, because you can see the mushroom peg and all the kind of inner workings of the inside of the arm, whereas I would have almost thought that you could have it that way, and that looks a little bit cleaner somehow, so I'm quite curious why they didn't do that. I guess maybe they feel that that looks better somehow, but it's not pegged into the side of the gun mode here at all. It's just this peg at the back, so it doesn't really matter either way. That whole not pegging in thing also means there's a lot of give in this whole section, like there's nothing connecting these arms at the front there, so I kind of wish there was. It's not the end of the world, but it would have been nice. Not gonna lie though, it is really strange that there is nothing to connect those pieces, and honestly I thought I'd made a mistake to begin with. Like, I had to go and double check that this is actually the correct transformation. I mean, it does mean that you can kind of raise this middle bit like so, but it's very unsatisfying, not gonna lie. Just, there should be a clip or something. But still, as far as tank modes go, this is actually pretty successful, I think, by and large. I mean, it rolls really nice on some little wheels, it looks suitably imposing, it's definitely got the vibes, you know? You can move the turret around quite freely as well, just have to hold onto those arms at the sides to make sure it doesn't all come apart. I also quite enjoy the way these little bits from the shoulders are incorporated on either side, that's a nice touch. And again, I'm kind of living for these little spikes and things on the front here. Now again, you can put the flames on the top here using those peg holes, and that does kind of cover up some of the sins of the inside of those arms a little bit. Definitely looks better with them in place. 100% better once those flames are on. Honestly, night and day. It absolutely is the way to go if you're going to display this thing in this mode. As for the rest of the accessories, well, actually everything stores on the side of the tank mode, and you do that by combining those weapons into one, as we saw earlier, and then popping these flames just on the side there. That whole assembly can just peg in on the side of the tank at the front just there, and there's actually a little peg at the back there to kind of secure it also. Or alternatively, as with the robot mode, there are literally tons of options for how you peg all of this stuff together. I mean, I kind of love the flames at the front of the tank there. I think that looks pretty rad. But anyway, there you go. There's all his various bits and bobs all put together in vehicle mode, and I think it works really well. It's very clever. I'm really digging this thing overall. It's just again, I keep saying it, it's a great package. And generally speaking, I think this might be towards the sort of upper echelon of Cybertronian style tanks by my estimation. Like, it's at least as good as the Legacy Tarn mold, although it's much bigger, much more imposing. It's also, by the way, another fantastic entry in this burgeoning 13 Primes lineup, right? Like, I am loving these toys so far. They're just so fun and creative and like a little bit different as well, so I genuinely cannot get enough of them. And dare I say, this might be my favourite one so far, which means that all told, Age of the Primes Megatronus is a bit of a hit. Definitely worth the 22-year wait to finally see this character done in accurate transforming toy form, and honestly, I couldn't be happier with the results. A very well deserved toot. Again, this review is brought to you by Tea of Source. You will find a link to their site in the description below, and I'd encourage you to go and give them a look because they've got tons of Transformers stuff in stock and available for pre-order right now. What you're waiting for. I'd also be very grateful if you could leave me a like for today's effort, please, but otherwise, that's it from me. So have a great rest of your day, and the Fallen shall rise again.